Hello, 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 my loves. As always, I hope that this live finds you well and in excellent spirits. Happy Tuesday, and welcome to another edition of the monthly Astro Forecast live here in the Astro Room on YouTube. I am your host and your favorite astrologer, Mel of Divine Feminine Works, where I help people unlock their divinity and discover their magic. So if this is our first time meeting, welcome. And as always, if you are returning, welcome back. This channel is everything astrology, spirituality, and manifestation. So if those are the things you like, if those are the things you love, or if those are the things you want to learn more about, don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well as that notification bell so you'll always be notified when I come out with new content. All right, my love. So this is the monthly Astro Forecast for the month of October 2024. All right. So we are entering the home stretch of the year. Can you believe it? I feel like I say this every month, so I know I sound like a broken record. However, I cannot believe that October is next week. It's like January lasts for 3 years, and then it's like a blur. Then it's the summer, then it's Christmas. And so we're sort of in the blur right now. And that kind of makes sense because we are smack dab in the middle of eclipse season. All right. And October starts off with a bang with another eclipse. So we are still within the eclipse corridor, as I like to call it. If you watched my live yesterday for the weekly astro forecast, I talked all about that. And so, it's one of those things. Eclipses are one of those things where you kind of just have to surrender. You kind of just have to let the chips fall where they may. You kind of have to just let things be what they are, but really see things for what they are. It is the universe's sort of quintessential way of communicating with us, the universe's way of really getting us on the right track and showing us that we indeed work with spirit. We work with the universe. We work with God. And eclipses, like I've said a million and one times before, it's the universe's way of saying, listen, let me take the wheel. Let me drive for a little bit, right? So we had the full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces, and that was last week. And then this month, we will be starting off the month with a solar eclipse in Libra. Now, I said this yesterday, and I'll repeat it now in case you didn't watch the weekly astro forecast, but there's something about this eclipse energy that feels a little different. I feel like in the past eclipses, definitely over the past 2 years, I feel like, at least for me, spirit has really been dragging me. Has really been dragging me like a rag doll. And this particular eclipse, or at least this eclipse season, meaning this one in the fall, because remember, we had an eclipse season earlier in the year in the spring, right? This eclipse season feels a lot calmer. It feels a lot more settled. It doesn't feel as erratic. And that sort of lets me know that, we as a society, we as humans are undergoing a serious transitionary period right now. And if you think things have been crazy, wait until we get to 2025. That's when things are going to be wildly different. And so we've been gearing up. Essentially, the last 2 years have been preparatory years for 2025 into 2026. That's when the whole game changes. And so to sort of get us acclimated to these changes, we've had these eclipses. And like I said, in the past, these eclipses have been very erratic. They've been lots of sudden changes, sudden upsets. I'll never forget, I believe it was last year, the eclipse in the spring. I believe it was in May. And that was when the North Node and the South Node were in Taurus and Scorpio. Now I'm a Taurus rising. So Taurus is my first house. Scorpio is my seventh house. So this particular eclipse, I believe it was a full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio. So this was going to light up my house of relationships. And what was so funny was that around eclipse time, and when I say around eclipse time, I mean 3 days before, 3 days after, and the day of the eclipse, it's like there was nothing going on. I didn't experience anything. And then all of a sudden, I want to say a week later, I got the worst news. Like, I can laugh about it now, but I was like low key devastated. It had to do with a relationship. And it was like, I was left feeling like raw, like stripped. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that this eclipse has literally just snatched to my edges. And I feel like the eclipses have kind of been like that. And this past one in Pisces, not so much. Like, it shows us that, or at least it shows me that we have been through the gauntlet essentially. And now we're starting to settle into this new cycle. And so this past eclipse in Pisces really closed some doors, like I mentioned yesterday. And these doors are closed. They're closed for good. There's no going back. There's no reopening. There's no breaking the lock or picking lock or whatever. It's done. And we're now entering a new cycle. And October opens up with a new moon solar eclipse in Libra, which is opening the door to some really exciting things. Okay, I have to pause for a second because my smoke alarm is like the battery is low and it keeps chirping. And I know it annoys me and it's going to annoy you. So hold on a second while I handle that. All right. Sorry about that. I usually have to do that because I don't know how to change the battery, but long story short, yeah, whatever. Anyway, so October opens up with this new moon solar eclipse in Libra. And Libra is the sign of relationships. So no matter where Libra is in your natal chart, there's going to be an undercurrent of relationships. Now, we've been experiencing, I'm not going to say tumultuous energy, but we've been experiencing changes with respect to our relationships ever since the South Node entered Libra last year. Last year? Yes, last year. And since then, the South Node going through Libra has really been like the universe doing cleanup with our relationships, whether it's the relationships themselves or whether it is relationship paradigms or relationship programming, right? I will undoubtedly say that you've either had changes in your relationships or changes in the way you think about relationships or perceive relationships. This is because as we enter this new phase, this new earth, right, which again is popping off 2025 into 2026, it's like the universe is like, listen, there are some people that can come along this journey with you and others whose season has come to an end, right? Especially if we've had relationships that haven't been serving us, if they haven't been equitable, if they haven't necessarily been in alignment with who we are or who we're becoming. That South Node in Libra has really been cleaning house. And so, with the South Node still in Libra, right? It's not going to change until next year. But with the South Node still in Libra, and at the same time having a solar eclipse, a new moon solar eclipse in Libra, it's like doors that have closed are now going to open, not open, but they're going to lead us or they're going to force us to perhaps open new doors, or new doors that are adjacent will become open to us now. And so it's exciting in a way because new people are probably coming in. New people are coming in, new ways of looking at relationships. And if you've watched any of my other videos, because I say this ad nauseum, relationships are a reflection of us. If you want to know more about yourself from an objective point of view, then you will definitely want to take a look at the people around you. Don't they say that like you are the average of the 5 people that you hang around with? Like that's the same sort of concept. And so when it comes to this new phase, right? If your perception of yourself has changed, or even if your perception of relationships have changed, you're going to see that reflected back to you in the people around you. Now, when I say relationships, it's not just romantic, it's friendship, family, coworkers, siblings, all of it. Right? All of it is changing. Of course, it really depends on where Libra is in your natal chart. That will let you know which relationship is up for grabs, right? And speaking of natal charts, if you would like to learn how to read your natal chart, then you'll definitely want to sign up for one of my free live workshops. I give them every 2 weeks. They are virtual, they're very informative, and you'll learn the sort of overarching view of your natal chart. And by the time the workshop is done, you will have a very solid foundation with within which you can start to read and understand your natal chart to precision. All right. And if you're interested in that, the link will be in the description box below and also tagged to the video. Right. So I do it every 2 weeks. You can pick whichever session you want, right? And you'll love it, I promise. All right. Shameless plug. Anyway, that's what we have to start out the month, right? And then we have a lot of the regular stuff, right? We have, October ushers in Scorpio season. We've got, after this eclipse in the beginning of the month, that's it for eclipse season. Then we go back to just regular new moons and full moons. So, of course, we have a full moon later on in the month. But the other sort of standout things that we have this month is that Jupiter is going retrograde and Pluto is actually going direct. And these are going to be pretty significant energy shifts, but I will get into all of those details in a second. All right. So let's see. Is there anything else that I need to announce before we move into the programming? I don't think so. All right. So without further ado, let's get into it and see exactly what we've got going on for the month of October. Well, actually, let me say this. So I titled this live, Things Get Intense, and they will, not just because of the eclipse, though, but more so because of Pluto. And Pluto going direct Pluto itself has been a big deal all year. Pluto changed signs. It's dipped back into Capricorn for September through November. And with Pluto going direct, it's like we're really pushing forward into the future. Whatever Apart from the eclipses that have closed doors, Pluto has also closed certain doors as well. And you're going to want to look at where Capricorn is in your chart. This will let you know which doors have been closed. However, again, with the eclipses and Pluto together, doors are really closing. That's because new doors are about to open. So it's going to feel intense. Maybe not intense in a shocking sort of way, right? But intense in a very profound sort of way. All right. So I just want to mention that before we get into the details. All right. So let's start off with the highlights. So first, I have what I like to call new relationships. All right. And this is the new moon solar eclipse in Libra. So this is letting go of the old, welcoming the new ways of relating, and understanding your desires within the parameters of your relationships. All right. That North Node in Aries, South Node in Libra is really getting us to be keen on exactly what we want, whether it's what we want out of life, whether it's what we want out of relationships, and sort of fine-tuning our lives, fine-tuning our minds, fine-tuning our hearts, even to align to those desires. All right. And that's sort of an undercurrent theme that's going to be playing out with this eclipse. But nonetheless, there's going to be this energy of sort of really being cognizant of your desires and sort of how to go about them in not only a self-serving kind of way. And when I say self-serving, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean in a way that is serving you, right? While also being kind of diplomatic about it and being able to incorporate perhaps other people into how you go about your desires. But I will explain that in a little bit. Then we have what I like to call self-imposed limitations, and this is Jupiter going retrograde. Now, that may not sound like a good thing, right? You hear limitations and you hear self-imposed. You're like, "Oh, that doesn't sound too good." It actually can be, especially when we're talking about Jupiter, right? So Jupiter is all about expansion. It's all about growth. It's all about sort of venturing out of your comfort zone. It's about reaching a higher level of consciousness. But when Jupiter's retrograde, we are urged to scale it back a little bit. Anytime any planet goes retrograde, it's about going within, right? And so when Jupiter goes retrograde, we go within, right? And we see where we need to scale things back a little bit, which is always super important, all right? Also, apart from dialing things back and going within, Jupiter retrograde allows us to tap into our inner wisdom, okay, and our sense of order. But I will explain more of that later. And then we close out with what I like to call last call again. And this is Pluto going direct in Capricorn. All right. So when Pluto went retrograde last month, I said it was last call, like last call for alcohol. We're still on last call, but the energy is going to feel slightly different now that Pluto is going direct. All right. So again, it's doors closing, things crumbling, but it's leaving the way for brand new things. So it's really, really exciting in a way. All right. So now let's take a look at the month and see what we've got going on. All right. So we've got the new moon solar eclipse in Libra, Jupiter going retrograde, and Pluto going direct. Then we've got Mercury in Scorpio, the full moon of the month, which is in the sign of Aries, Venus moving into Sagittarius, and then we close out the month with the sun moving into the sign of Scorpio. All right. So again, regular stuff except for this eclipse, right? But everything else we're pretty much used to already. All right. So let's get into the details. So first and foremost, we've got the new moon eclipse in Libra, and this is happening on October 2nd, right? So I definitely talked about this ad nauseum, and I will be dropping a video on Friday dedicated to this eclipse so you can figure out and understand exactly what is going on. But suffice it to say, relationships. Okay. Now, like I said before, the South Node is going through Libra. So this is cleaning up our relationships. And this is important because relationships tend to be sensitive topics for us. Relationships are where we learn the most, right? About life, about ourselves, about everything, right? It could also be it could really be the catalyst to change. And with the South Node in Libra, it's like Libra loves fairness. Libra loves when everyone gets along, right? However, Libra needs balance. And if you have relationships that are imbalanced, if you have relationships that are not serving you, maybe you're holding on to these relationships out of obligation, right? Like in the case of family, or maybe you're holding on to them because of history, like in the case of friends, or maybe even a marriage or something like that, right? South Node in Libra is like, listen, this isn't working. It's not working. It's not fair. It's not fair to me, right? Even though Libra is the sign of we, right? Libra is the relationship sign. Inherent in we is me, especially because the opposite sign of Libra is Aries. And with the North Node in Aries, we are becoming very laser-like focused on what we need and what we want. North Node going through Aries is like, listen, I understand that you want to be in a relationship. I understand that, maybe you've got some people pleasing issues. Maybe you just don't want to confront people. Maybe you've got insecurities, whatever it is that has made you be complacent in this relationship. I am here to show you that that's not working. I am here to show you that maybe you're neglecting what you need and what you want for the sake of this relationship. And North Node in Aries is not letting you forget that. And with the eclipses, these tag team eclipses that have been happening in Aries and Libra since last year, that's the theme, or at least one of the themes that's been playing out. So it's like, all right, I'm in this relationship, but maybe my partner doesn't pay attention to my needs. Maybe my partner is selfish. Maybe I'm selfish in this relationship. Maybe I'm taking more than I give. Whatever it is, if there's an imbalance, these eclipses have really brought that to the forefront. It's like put it on Front Street, like, so you can't help but see it. And so it's like eclipses will do one of two things, I find. Typically, they enlighten you, especially the lunar eclipses, right? Because that's when the moon is full and all of that. And, now that you see this information, the universe is like, what are you going to do with this, right? Or the universe will just clean house for you, which can be very jarring sometimes, especially if you don't expect it. So maybe you've been given this information. Maybe you've been shown what needs to change. Maybe you're now privy to what needs to change or how you need to change. So what are you going to do about it? And again, with this eclipse happening in Libra, At the same time that the south node is clearing stuff in, this solar eclipse is perhaps bringing people in. And sometimes, a lot of times people will say the universe tests you. I don't think the universe tests you. I just think that everything is cyclical, meaning that once you sort of heal from a situation or once you've overcome an obstacle, right? The universe, it just comes right back around to you. And it's not to test you, that's just the nature of how the universe works. And now that it comes back around the second time, now you can react differently. And so this may be a time where new people are coming in and you may feel like you're being tested because you're like, wait a minute, okay, I know that maybe I have a codependency issue when it comes to relationships. So, with this new person that's coming in, I'm not going to be so clingy. I'm not going to be so insecure about what they're doing and who they're with, right? And it's going to feel uncomfortable at first until it becomes second nature. And so, it's really important that you work through that uncomfortability, right? The universe is not testing you. This isn't some way for the universe to fuck you over or whatever. This is just the universe saying, listen, we're bringing this back around. Have you learned your lesson? Right? I gave you the information. Now, what are you going to do with it? I feel like this particular eclipse is going to be really exciting because I've already started to see sort of the makings of how this eclipse is going to manifest in the sense of meeting new people, networking with different people, right? And these are people who, at least in my life, if you asked me 2 or 3 years ago if I would hang out with these people or talk to these people, I probably would have said no, because at that point, I was pretty much a very different person. But now I'm really finding people who align with who I'm becoming, right? But part of that is because I've become a lot more grounded and rooted in who I am becoming. And that's North Node in Aries. North Node in Aries is like, listen, this is what we want. And we're convicted in what we want, right? We're convicted in our goal, our mission, our purpose. And so we've settled into that now. And now that we've settled into it, now people are going to start to show up that vibrate at that same frequency, that are on that same wavelength. So it can be really exciting, right? Provided that you heeded the lessons that the universe was giving you in the first place, meaning that when these eclipses have been showing up, and mind you, these eclipses are going to close out in early 2025. So we're sort of at the tail end of this North Node in Aries, South Node in Libra chapter of our lives, right? If the universe has been like, listen, you got to fix this, or this relationship paradigm that you've been operating on, it's not serving you, and you're just like, oh, okay, but you haven't done anything. Yeah, this eclipse is going to get louder. It's going to get much louder. So maybe for you, that eclipse may be a little intense, may grab you by your edges, right? However, it's information and it's all about what you do with it, right? And so once we get over this new moon solar eclipse in Libra, that's it. That's it for eclipse season in 2024. And remember, eclipses are like a saga, right? They build upon each other. And it's not just the fact that 3 days before, 3 days after, and the day of the eclipse is when things happen. Things can happen weeks, even months following the eclipse, but it all has that common thread. And that common thread has everything to do with where the North Node is, in this case, Aries, and where the South Node is, in this case, Libra, right? So it's a story that takes time to play out, right? If you were to look at and examine the story of previous eclipses, right? So before the North Node was in Aries and the South Node was in Libra, they were in Taurus and Scorpio respectively. What did that look like for you? What was that story? It was an 18-month story, right? What did that look like? What happened? What transpired? It's likely very interesting because there were some changes. There were some shifts in your life, right? Again, eclipses are the universe's way of getting us on the right track and the universe's way of taking the wheel, which I definitely love. All right. So that's how we start the month. So then on October 9th, we have Jupiter going retrograde in Gemini. All right. So Jupiter just entered Gemini a couple of months ago, or I should say earlier this year, right? And so this is the first Jupiter retrograde in Gemini that we will be experiencing over the next, I guess, year, right? And so, with that, like I said before, it's all about self imposed limitations. And this is a good thing, right? Because Jupiter is all about expansion. Jupiter is all about sort of growth and just an outward and upward trajectory, right? Think of Jupiter as like the energy of Jupiter is like launching into another stratosphere. It can literally be like having your head in the clouds, right? Which is great. It allows you to see the bigger picture. It allows you to really raise your level of consciousness. It's great. However, we live in a dimension where there is duality and there needs to be balance. You can't just be focused on big picture all the time. There needs to be balance. And to have balance, instead of expansion, you need limitation. And I call it self imposed limitation because anytime a planet is retrograde, it allows us to be intentional about going within, right? And so, one of the best uses of this particular Jupiter retrograde energy is seeing perhaps where you're not necessarily thinking of things in a realistic sort of way. Jupiter in Gemini obviously raises your level of consciousness, like on a logical plane, on a mental plane. But Jupiter in Gemini definitely allows you to think big picture and use your imagination, right? Remember, I said Jupiter energy is like launching into a different stratosphere. So, this is like having your head in the clouds, almost literally. So, it allows you to really evoke your imagination. It allows you to see big picture, maybe even to be a little optimistic and have rose colored glasses, right? Now, that is all well and good, and we need that. However, that can definitely get out of hand. And one of the negative sides of Jupiter, and I say negative in quotes because Jupiter is known as a greater benefic, it's known as a positive energy planet. However, there is such thing as too good of a thing, and sometimes something that's too good isn't necessarily good for you. And so Jupiter can be excessive. Jupiter can be over the top. Jupiter can be out of touch, right? And so Jupiter retrograde in Gemini gives you the opportunity to be intentional about seeing where your thinking is not necessarily realistic, right? It's one thing to be optimistic. It's another thing to be toxically positive. And we all know, we've all heard of that, or we've all known someone who's toxically positive, right? Toxic positivity, where it's like, everything is roses and rainbows. Everything is this, everything is that, right? Nothing's wrong. Everything's great. No, we live here on earth, right? And so shit hits the fan sometimes. There's frustration, there's fear, there's a whole bunch of shit that we don't like, but we have to deal with it anyway. And so when Jupiter is retrograde in Gemini, it sort of gets you back in touch with reality a little bit. It's not to say that that's where you need to live. These are self imposed limitations, but you're not limiting yourself from moving forward, right? Understanding limitations honestly can help you go farther and can help you elevate, right? Because you know what you're working against. It's great to want to be a millionaire or even a billionaire, right? But Jupiter and Gemini may have you thinking that you can go from broke and not being able to rub two pennies together to being a millionaire next week. And if you go on YouTube, there are plenty of videos that will support that foolishness, for lack of a better term. Not to say that you can't be a billionaire, but understand that that takes time. It takes work. It's not going to happen next week. So that's sort of an example of Jupiter retrograde in Gemini at work, right? Being a little more realistic, being a little more grounded, understanding your limitations can help you overcome them. And when you overcome them, that's when you actually have success. Because again, if you think that you can be a millionaire next week, and I'm not saying that it's not necessarily possible, because guess what? You could win the lotto, right? The chances of that are very slim, right? So when you understand that the limitation that stands in the way of this lofty dream of being a millionaire is that it takes time and it takes work, if you are patient and if you put in the work, you're able to overcome those obstacles. And you can eventually become a millionaire. You see how that works? So Jupiter retrograde in Gemini helps you get your mind in a more realistic place. Okay. And Jupiter will remain retrograde in Gemini for a couple of months, maybe even for the remainder of the year, right? So it's kind of time to rein things in a little bit, time to get a little more realistic. But again, that's ultimately a good thing. All right. So after that, we've got Pluto going direct in Capricorn, and this is happening on October 11th. All right. So Pluto is like the star of the show this year because Pluto does not change signs frequently. Pluto first entered Capricorn back in 2008, and it just entered Aquarius earlier this year. All right. So this means that we are on the precipice of a whole new generation, a whole new era, a whole new beginning, right? Now, as I mentioned in the September monthly astro forecast, Pluto is dipping back into Capricorn, is retrograding back into Capricorn between September and November. So right in the middle of that, right in October, is when Pluto will turn direct. Now, it will not leave Capricorn until November. However, now Pluto is moving forward. And this is important because Pluto is the planet of transformation. I like to think of Pluto as a wrecking ball. And since it began its journey in Capricorn back in 2008, Pluto has been destructing and decimating a lot of structures in our society. Government is falling apart, especially here in the US, right? Institutions like religious institutions are, feeling the same effect of Pluto, right? Large corporations. It's so interesting how now, I've been an entrepreneur since 2010, okay? And what has changed about entrepreneurship since then is the level of access that people have. My father was an entrepreneur back in the 80s, and my mother was an entrepreneur also. And the things that you had to do to be an entrepreneur, it's like the barrier to entry was very high because normal people just didn't have access to the things that you would need to have your own business, right? Look at the world now. Every person can be an entrepreneur. The barrier to entry is so low now because of the access that we have. That is literally Pluto going through Capricorn. We're dismantling big corporations, and what is left is small businesses so that the average person can be a business owner, can be a CEO, can be a founder, right? How many stories have we been hearing about people who literally founded their, company at the kitchen table or in the garage, and now they're getting bought out by major corporations? This is literally Pluto at work, right? And so since then, like I said, Pluto has been decimating all of these structures in society and in our own lives too. So wherever Capricorn is in your chart, this is where Pluto has been doing major damage, but also major reconstruction, right? And so with Pluto dipping back into Capricorn for these 2 months, again, September to November, it's the last pass of the wrecking ball. Whatever is not meant to come into the future, decimated. And now that Pluto's going direct in Capricorn, now reconstruction is beginning or is continuing, right? We're done with the destruction. We're done with the demo. And now we are moving on to construction. It's like we're building a new house. And this house is going to be, what do I want to call it? It's going to be one of those really high-end tech houses where everything is controlled by a remote or by Bluetooth or by whatever, because Pluto is moving into Aquarius. So you know how I just talked about how entrepreneurship is more accessible because people have more access to information and even resources, right? The door to access, the door to information is going to be kicked wide open when Pluto gets comfortable in Aquarius. We've already seen and we've already experienced a taste of this. But come November, when Pluto enters Aquarius for good, the inventions, the innovations, they're going to blow our minds, right? And we're moving into a whole new age. So with Pluto going direct in Capricorn, it's time to start building. Now, Capricorn is a sign that is ruled by Saturn, and Saturn has everything to do with structure. In the body, in the physical body, Capricorn represents your skeletal structure. It's the structure that keeps you standing upright and grounded, right? So, arguably, since Pluto is finishing its visit in Capricorn, I want you to examine these structures in your life, particularly the structures that have to do with the house that Capricorn governs in your natal chart. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, sign up for that natal chart workshop. You won't regret it. You now have a new structure, whether it's a new job, a new career, a new business, a new mindset. You have a new structure, and it's this structure that you are going to be taking into this new era and this new generation. And that's starting right now. So it's almost like, to give it an analogy, it's like we bought a house, right, on a plot of land, and the house was old. We're in 2024. It's like you bought a house that was built in 1930, right? Rather than renovating it room by room, you just demolished the whole house. Okay. And now that demolition is finally done. And now it's time to pour a new foundation. And that's what Pluto going direct in Capricorn right now is doing. We're pouring a new foundation, and then we're going to start building this house from November, when Pluto moves into Aquarius for good. So these are very exciting times. Now, I want to draw your attention to how this energy is sort of working together. So I already talked about the eclipse, right? And how that's simultaneously closing doors and opening doors. And then we've got Pluto going direct, which is like rebuilding. So you see how the energy of October has this very newness kind of flavor to it. It has this doors opening, new foundation. Like it's going to feel like life is opening up to you. It should, at least, right? So allow it to. The worst thing that you could do with this Pluto transit, right? With Pluto going from retrograde to direct and then moving signs, is trying to hold on to whatever needs to be demolished. That's like standing at the corner of a huge building that's about to be hit with a wrecking ball. It doesn't matter how tight you hold on, that demolition, that destruction is still going to happen. And destruction is not a bad thing. Things, I want to say, overstay their welcome, but that's not necessarily symbolic of everything. Things run their course, right? It's like you have something that's meant to last for a certain amount of time. I mean, we notice this with everyday things, right? Certain things, you're meant to keep for a longer time than others. But something like technology, see how fast technology moves? A year from now, you may be holding something that's absolutely obsolete, right? Things run their course. And Pluto knows that and understands that, and then gets rid of it. That's why the zodiac sign that is really comfortable with this kind of energy is Scorpio. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto. It's also ruled by Mars, but Pluto is its modern ruler. Scorpio inherently understands the need for death, the need for destruction, because certain things cannot function anymore. Nature knows this. Plants have their season. The seed is planted, it blossoms, and then what happens? It dies to leave room for something else. That is the cycle of life. And so whatever is ending right now, I promise you, you don't need it. You really don't. It may not be in the cards for you. It may not be in alignment with where you're going. Here's something that I learned fairly recently. A lot of times what you want, you think you want, but you actually don't want, because you don't necessarily see the whole picture. Something that in the moment, and a lot of times, I'm not going to lie, this happens with people, it happens with relationships. You see someone, you are interacting with them, and you're like, oh my gosh, I really like this person. I want this person. I want to be with this person. And then what happens? sometimes it doesn't work out, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, like that was my person. We were supposed to do this. We were supposed to do that. Guess what? The universe sees everything that you can't. And a lot of times what we think we want, the universe is like, girl, if you knew what this really was, yeah, you wouldn't want it anymore. So sometimes we have to let things go because they're not in alignment with who we are becoming, or where we need to go. Especially if you are on a spiritual journey, especially if you have work to do. We all have something to do, right? We all have a purpose. When you are on purpose, anything that's not in alignment with that spirit will sometimes literally snatch out of your life. And you may be thinking, oh my gosh, like I'm so unlucky. Nothing good comes my way. No, it's that spirit is like, you have a job to do. And this thing, this situation, this place, this person, these people, they would hinder your ability to do what you need to do. Right? So they're like, yeah, we're not going to let you have this. There's a reason why things end. There's a reason why things don't work out. Pluto knows this. But Pluto is also the planet of rebirth. Scorpio is associated with sex because it is ruled by Pluto. Pluto understands that when you have sex and you conceive a child, you cease being an egg and a sperm. You've now merged into something else. So you've died to your individuality in order to have this collective thing, right? Pluto does not destroy without giving something, without creating something new. So yes, for some, this may be at a very intense time because doors are closing. And when I say closing, honey, these doors are not opening back up. They're not. Something new is being birthed right now. And I know you feel the excitement. I know you feel like something is about to pop off in a good way, because it is. It is. Things are about to get really interesting, really exciting. Remember I said things are really going to pop off 2025, 2026. And this is all the build up to that, right? So be patient and allow the universe to really show you what it has up its sleeve, because honey, it is glorious. All right. So that's Pluto direct. Then on October 13th, we've got Mercury entering Scorpio. All right. So I was just talking about Scorpio and that scorpionic energy about transformation, death, and rebirth, right? Mercury and Scorpio makes communication very mysterious. It's not so much about what's said, it's about how it makes you feel and what's not being said. Communication with Mercury and Scorpio, it's like reading between the lines, right? It could also be telepathic communication. It could also be, psychic impressions and things like that. All of that juicy stuff that people love to talk about, right? But Mercury in Scorpio, like the best use of that energy is using your speech, using your words to transform something. Now, Mercury in Scorpio is great for having substantive conversations that can lead to transformation. Now, these conversations may not necessarily feel that good, right? This is the type of conversations that Mercury and Scorpio could bring are, you're fired, you're laid off, I don't want to be with you anymore. Like those kind of conversations, but they do bring about transformation, right? Scorpio represents the underworld. It represents the darkness, right? Like it's like light and dark. Scorpio is definitely the dark, and there's a place for dark, not dark as in evil, but dark as in shadow. So this is sort of giving expression, verbal expression to your shadow side. Mercury in Scorpio, and consequently Scorpio season, which begins in October, is the time for shadow work. It's spooky season. I mean, which doesn't really have anything to do with that, but it sort of plays into the whole theme. And Scorpio is our shadow. So thinking about your shadow, integrating your shadow, using your speech to transform things, to either kill things, not literally, or to create things. Remember, I said Pluto has everything to do with death and rebirth. And Mercury in Scorpio is doing that with your ideas and with your communication. It's also about, like I said, things that reading between the lines. Mercury in Scorpio is great for investigative work and research, getting to the bottom of things. Scorpio is the private investigator of the zodiac. So understanding and getting to the truth of things is definitely going to be a theme and is part of the energy signature of Mercury in Scorpio. All right. Is there anything else I need to say about Mercury in Scorpio? No, that's pretty much it. Okay. And Mercury will remain in Scorpio for a couple of weeks, about a month, I should say. So, Mercury's in Scorpio, definitely engage in shadow work. Use your words and your thoughts and your mindset to either transform something, end something, or create something new. All right. Then we've got the full moon of the month, which is going down in the sign of Aries, and this is happening on October 17th. So by this point, we are out of eclipse season, and this is just a regular full moon. So full moons illuminate and culminate. And in a sign like Aries, it's like endings and beginnings wrapped up into one. And it's really going to shed light on what it is that you want and what it is that you need. Aries is a sign that's very selfish and not in a bad way. It's just self-centered. It's focused on self. And so whenever we have a full moon in Aries, it's sort of like the universe's way of bringing you back to what you need and what you want and what you desire. So likely around that time, that is what's going to happen. So you're going to want to pay attention to whatever house Aries is in your natal chart. This will let you know what kind of desire may be ignited or illuminated at that time. All right. Then that same day, October 17th, we have Venus moving into the sign of Sagittarius. Now, Venus in Sagittarius, it's very idyllic, it's very hopeful, very optimistic. Venus in Sagittarius wants to experience a lot. It wants to expand. So when it comes to Venusian things, right? Like relationships and money, for instance, you want to experience growth and expansion with those things when Venus is in Sagittarius. It's seeing the bigger picture. It's experiencing different things that take you out of your comfort zone. You know, Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. And Sagittarius is the natural ruler of the ninth house. And the ninth house is the house of higher education and long distance travel. So Venus in Sagittarius is great for perhaps going back to school, especially college, law school, med school, upper level education, specifically getting the money for those things. But it's also great for travel, especially travel with relationships. So anytime Venus is in Sagittarius, it's a great time to take a vacation. It's a great time to travel. You may meet, you may start a relationship. Maybe you meet someone in a foreign place and you start a relationship with them. Venus in Sagittarius is great for passport bros, right? As controversial as that is. But it's great for expanding your mind and experiencing different things, okay? So this is the time where you want to plan a trip. This is a time where you want to take a trip if you can, right? It's also great for things like foreign commerce, foreign transactions, right? Since Venus has a lot to do with money. But what I love the most about Venus and Sagittarius is that it allows you to really set goals that are kind of lofty and that are kind of big and or long term. So if you have a long-term relationship ideal, you may want to set those goals or maybe even take action steps toward those goals when Venus is in Sagittarius, okay? Also great for money. So if you have financial goals, lofty financial goals, you'll want to set those or take action steps toward those when Venus is in Sagittarius. Now, here's the other thing about Venus in Sagittarius. It likes to be free. Now, I talked about this a little bit when I talked about Jupiter and how Jupiter is expansive, right? Like wants to expand and grow. Venus in Sagittarius is very much about freedom almost in relationships. Okay. But by and large, it's also great for vacations. It's great to find love overseas. And if you are interested, I do astrocartography readings where I can tell you the best places in the world for you when it comes to love, money, business, spirituality, all the things. All right. So if you're interested, I'll put the link for that in the description box below and tag it to the video as well. All right. But that's also, but Venus in Sagittarius is a really good transit to expand and grow in terms terms of your relationships and your money. All right. Point blank, period. And then finally, we close out the month with the sun moving into the sign of Scorpio. And this is happening on October 22nd. So on that date, we will officially be in Scorpio season. A lot of people like to call it spooky season, whatever. It's the season that I like to call the season of darkness. Like I said before, it's great for shadow work. It's great for transformation. You know, it's interesting that during Scorpio season, many cultures venerate their ancestors, right? In Haitian culture, we have Fête Guédé. In, Hispanic culture, there's Dia de los Muertos. Ancestor veneration is a thing during Scorpio season because we are acknowledging death, right? Death and our lineage and how that sort of still lives on. Scorpio is very, very, very familiar with death in various forms because death is just a part of the cycle. It's a part of the transformation cycle, right? So wherever Scorpio is in your chart, when the sun is in Scorpio, this is the area of life where you can really transform things. And it's really important that you're cognizant of that because a lot of times we're not necessarily aware of the energy that's at our disposal. And with Scorpio being such a transformational energy, if you're really looking to make a change, you can really do so when the sun is in Scorpio. So for instance, let's say you're a Scorpio rising. Scorpio would be your first house. If you're looking to lose weight, if you're looking to gain weight, if you're looking to change your body, Scorpio season is when you would want to start. If you are, let's say you are Scorpio, let's say you're a Leo rising, Scorpio would be your fourth house of home and family. If you are looking to change your living situation, like if you're looking to move, if you're looking to purchase a home, if you're looking to purchase property, you're going to want to start at Scorpio season, right? Let's say you are a Taurus rising, like me. If you're looking to take your relationship to the next level, get booed up, you're going to want to make those changes and do what you need to do during Scorpio season because it is the season of transformation. So remember that and take a look at your natal chart and see what house that governs, right? Maybe it's your second house, right? So maybe you're a Libra rising. This is the time to really get your money up. And this transformation that you would be intentional about undertaking, you would do it in a very Scorpio kind of way, meaning that you would do the shadow work to understand perhaps what is standing in the way of you having this. What is a stumbling block to this transformation? What is your shadow side? What does your shadow side have to say about it? Scorpio energy is very much like mining for diamonds. It's dirty work. You got to go underground, right? To find the diamonds. For the diamonds to form, it's pressurized carbon, right? It's pressure. So there's pressure and there's dirtiness, right? A lot of things that people don't like. But that's where the value is. That's where the diamonds are. So if you're looking to make a change, you have to examine your shadow side, right? You have to do the shadow work. And so again, look to see where Scorpio is in your chart. That is where you can make a significant and profound change and transform your life during Scorpio season. All right. And that is how we end the month, right? Nothing too crazy, nothing we haven't handled before, but a lot of newness is coming in this month with the eclipse and with Pluto going direct. All right, my love. So thank you so much for tuning in. I sincerely hope that you were able to get at least one important piece of information that you can use going into the month. All right. For information on all of my products and services, all of that is located in the description box below or tagged to this video. All right. Thanks so much again for tuning in. I wish you nothing but the absolute best for October and beyond. And I will see you in my next video. All right, my loves. Take care.